Welcome to Life Stories. Today's story begins with a woman being pulled out of a first-class line without a word. No raised voice, no confrontation, just a quiet black woman holding a valid boarding pass, treated like a mistake that needed to be corrected. Security was called before she even said hello. But this isn't a story about humiliation. It's a story about what happens when the person you try to silence turns out to own the silence itself. Because she wasn't there for the seat. She was there to test the system that thought she didn't belong. And by the time the plane landed, everything about that airline and the people who ran it would never be the same. Hit that subscribe button to begin today's story and stay with us to see what power really looks like when it's quiet, steady, and absolutely unstoppable. Jade Whitmore didn't say a word. She didn't have to. By the time airport security arrived at Gate 42 of JFK's Terminal B, she was already the center of attention, and not in the way one imagines for someone holding a first-class boarding pass. Two officers approached her with the silent synchronization of people used to asserting control. Their eyes scanned her, not her ticket. Their presence was the warning, the judgment, and the verdict, all at once. "Ma'am, step aside." That was it. No reason given. No glance at the barcode glowing from her digital boarding pass. Just the kind of clipped finality used for intruders, not passengers. The waiting area didn't gasp. It didn't resist. The people standing in line did what they always do. They looked, and then they looked away. Because Jade didn't look like seat 2A. Not to them. Not with that dark skin. Not with that calm stillness. Not with that silence. But what none of them knew, not the flight crew, not the grinning floor supervisor leaning casually against the check-in podium, not even the man in a tailored overcoat who breezed past with a nod and zero scrutiny, was that Jade hadn't just bought a first-class seat. She had purchased something else entirely. It was 5:43 a.m. when she arrived, long before the terminal's energy had fully woken. She walked with the quiet resolve of someone who wasn't trying to make a statement, only a point. Her navy hoodie was plain, her jeans well-worn. No heels, no designer handbag. Just a canvas tote over one shoulder and the steady gait of a woman on a mission. When she reached the priority access lane, Derek Mason, the gate agent with a flawless part in his hair and a name tag that gleamed with corporate polish, gave her a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "This lane's for executive platinum and first-class boarding," he offered, tone light but unmistakably skeptical. "I'm aware," Jade replied, raising her phone with the boarding pass already loaded. He scanned it. A beat passed. Then another. The screen confirmed what Jade already knew. "Right," he said too quickly. "You're all set." But as she moved forward, Derek leaned toward the colleague next to him and muttered, just loud enough, "Thought she was in the wrong line." The other agent laughed under his breath. Jade kept walking. At TSA, things were no better. Despite her pre-check clearance, she was randomly selected for additional screening. Her bag was opened, her belongings inspected, a travel-sized toiletry bag, a novel, a sealed envelope, and one slim folder with a red string clasp. The agent held it up. "What's this?" "Private documents," Jade said, voice flat but firm. "You a lawyer?" "Not exactly." That was the end of it. They let her through. She didn't protest. She never did. Not there, not then. She had learned early. Protests are loud. But power, real power, doesn't need to raise its voice. By the time she reached Gate 42, the area was already buzzing with passengers sipping overpriced lattes and scrolling half-attentively through their screens. Jade didn't join them. She found a seat in the corner, placed her tote on the floor, and pulled the sealed envelope into her lap. It was heavier than it looked. Inside was a signed directive with the potential to alter the future of a $4.1 billion merger between Havenport Air and its new European partner. What most people didn't know was that Havenport's largest voting bloc, 41%, was held in trust by a legacy financial entity known only to a handful of people. Jade was one of them. No one would have guessed. That was the point. They had designed this moment for her. 3 years ago, she received a letter from Easton Trust's governance board. A clause in the merger documents required one final validation from a fiduciary verifier, a real-world test of integrity. She would fly incognito, observe the system that had asked to be entrusted with billions in assets, and decide if it was worthy. The instructions were simple. See how they treat you when they think you're nobody. Now boarding Group 1 for Flight 312 to San Francisco. First class and executive platinum, please proceed to the gate. Jade stood. The man 2 spots ahead glanced at her, then at the gate agent as if waiting for confirmation. The gate agent barely looked up when Jade reached the front. Boarding is for first class only, she said. I know, Jade replied, holding out her phone again. Seat 2A. The agent blinked, scanned, hesitated, then forced a corporate smile. You may proceed. Eyes followed her as she stepped onto the jet bridge. They always did. Inside the cabin, she took her seat and carefully placed the envelope into the seat back pocket in front of her. The man beside her, gray sports coat, aviator glasses, gave her a nod, then retreated into his tablet. The hum of the aircraft rose around her. Her fingers rested lightly on the folder in her tote, but her mind was already moving ahead. Because they hadn't just challenged her seat. They had unknowingly triggered a series of audits, recordings, scanner logs, and behavioral compliance protocols built for moments exactly like this. And in the background, Easton Trust's silent system was watching. Not her, them. She wasn't just a passenger. She was the metric. And in less than 6 hours, every judgment passed on her appearance, her silence, her calm, would be read back to the people who made them, not through vengeance, through verification. What if the person you dismissed held the keys to your entire future? And what happens when silence isn't surrender, but surveillance? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated based on how you look, act, or stay silent? What would you have done in Jade's place? Follow us to find out what happens when the flight lands and the truth finally boards. The flight was calm. On the surface, Jade sat motionless in 2A, her tote tucked beneath the seat, the sealed envelope resting flat across her lap. Outside the window, dawn streaked the clouds in soft amber light, the kind that suggested peace. But inside the cabin, something colder pulsed beneath the service smiles and scripted pleasantries. Heather Cole, the lead flight attendant, paused briefly when she reached row 2. Her smile was tight, transactional. Good morning, she said without warmth. Jade responded with a polite nod. Nothing more. Heather moved on, but not without glancing at her clipboard, then back at Jade, her eyes flicking like she was trying to place a memory, or a threat. Within minutes, the change became clear. Water was offered to passengers in row 1, then in row 3. Row 2 was skipped, twice. Jade didn't speak. She watched. When the beverage cart rolled by after takeoff, the junior attendant paused beside her. Can I offer you something to drink? Just water, Jade replied. The attendant hesitated, glanced at Heather, then whispered something. Heather returned with a rehearsed smile and said, Unfortunately, complimentary beverage service isn't included with your fare class, ma'am. Jade raised an eyebrow. Even for first? Heather blinked, then double-checked the manifest. I'll check with the cabin manager, she said, and walked away. The man in 2B looked up from his tablet, puzzled. Aren't drinks included in first class? Jade didn't answer. She didn't need to. It wasn't about the drink. It never was. It was about a test, a small, invisible decision that revealed more than it intended. Moments later, the lead cabin manager, Logan Turner, stopped at her row. We've had a seating issue reported by ground crew, he said briskly. Would you mind if I re-verified your boarding pass? No, Jade said calmly. She unlocked her phone and held it out. He stared at the pass longer than necessary, nodded slowly, and mumbled, probably a system glitch. Then he moved on without apology. Heather returned seconds later with that same brittle brightness. We've updated your record, ma'am, she said, as if the record had ever been the issue. Let us know if you need anything. Jade didn't respond. Instead, she looked out the window again and remembered another flight. 15 years ago, across the country, to attend her grandmother's funeral. It was the first time she'd flown alone, and the first time she realized the world didn't give respect. It waited for you to earn it, and sometimes, even then, it took it back. As if on cue, Heather reappeared again. This time she crouched beside Jade's seat, her voice hushed but firm. "We've had a request to adjust seat assignments for weight balance," she said. "Would you mind moving to 17D?" Jade turned slowly toward her. "Weight balance," she repeated, her tone even. Heather nodded, her smile barely holding. "Just protocol." Jade didn't blink. "I'll stay where I am." The smile froze. For a beat, Heather said nothing. Then she stood and walked off, not looking back. No one came to move her again. The turbulence never arrived. Instead, the cabin fell into that strange in-between space, movies flickering, headphones humming, time passing without motion. People leaned back, slept, typed, snacked. Jade sat perfectly still. She didn't reach for the envelope again. She didn't need to. Every skipped service, every whisper between crew members, every refusal to see her had been logged, not just in her mind, but in real time, through the encrypted app now running silently on her phone. It was a passive audit. Triggered when her travel identity, protected under Eason Trust's legacy clause, was flagged without cause. Jade hadn't made a scene. She hadn't needed to. She had been watching, but more importantly, the system had been watching them. 20 minutes before descent, the scent of warmed bread drifted through the cabin. Meal service had begun. Heather arrived with a menu for 2B, offered options with grace, took the order with a smile. Then she stepped past Jade like she wasn't there. 3 rows later, Jade cleared her throat. Just once. Heather turned, all pleasantness gone rigid. "Was I skipped for meal service?" Jade asked, her voice low and steady. "Oh," Heather said, folk surprised. "I wasn't sure you were eligible." Jade tilted her head. "I'm in 2A. Heather laughed lightly, the sound brittle. "Sometimes these assignments get complicated." "There's nothing complicated about that," Jade said. Heather checked the manifest again, exaggerated this time, like performing the act might make it more legitimate. "Right," she nodded. "Would you like the herb-roasted chicken or the miso-glazed cod?" "The cod?" "Coming right up." 15 minutes later it arrived, cold, barely reheated, the vegetables limp. Jade didn't touch it. She just placed the lid back on, pushed the tray forward, and returned her hand to the envelope. Not angry, just certain. Because the real turbulence was never in the air. It was in the quiet decisions made when no one thinks you matter. If you were Jade, would you have stayed quiet? Or would you have stood up midair and demanded the world notice? Stay tuned. What happens next will challenge everything the crew thought they understood about who really owns the sky. The wheels touched down on the tarmac with a soft, decisive thud. Jade didn't move. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged, prompting a rustle of bags and bodies. Phones reconnected. Passengers shifted impatiently. But she remained still, her hand resting lightly on the envelope, her gaze out the window. Only when the aisle began to clear did she rise. She moved slowly, deliberately, as if the plane were still in motion. Her canvas tote swung gently over her shoulder, the sealed envelope tucked against her side like a blade she never had to unsheath. As she stepped into the jet bridge, the cool air of the terminal met her like a cue. 2 steps down the corridor, a man in a dark suit stepped into her path. "Miss Whitmore?" he asked. She didn't blink. "Yes." "I need to verify your final destination before your luggage is released. Just a quick process." She studied him for a beat, then said quietly, "Do you need to verify where I'm going?" He glanced down at the clipboard. "Yes, ma'am. Your reservation was reclassified mid-flight. System flag, code 19B. Her voice was sharper now, each syllable a stone. "Who filed that code?" "It doesn't say," he replied, voice less certain. "It wasn't auto-generated." He hesitated. "Take me to whoever's handling this." He nodded, motioning her toward a side corridor. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Gray walls, storage doors, forgotten smells of industrial-grade cleaner. At the end of the hallway, a door. Operations holding 3B. Inside sat a woman with a blunt bob and an even blunter expression. "Miss Whitmore," she said crisply, without standing. "Your seat was reassigned due to a flag in our system. It originated from a voucher tied to a discontinued loyalty program." Jade cut her off. "So your system doesn't recognize its own assets. We've had cases of fraudulent resellers. You're implying I fraudulently boarded a flight I'm authorized to audit." "We're not accusing. She reached into her tote and placed a slim black card on the desk, platinum embossed. Not for credit, for identity. The woman's posture shifted, slightly, almost imperceptibly. What is this? Level 4 authorization, Jade said. Easton Financial Holdings. She followed it with the envelope, now opened with care. The letterhead gleamed. This document grants me legal oversight of all merger compliance involving Havenport Air. I'm not a passenger. She paused. I'm the fiduciary verifier. Silence hit the room like a gavel. The agent's assistant twitched beside her, visibly reevaluating everything that had just unfolded. You'll need to report everything, Jade added, and you'll stop touching things that don't belong to you. The woman's eyes fell to the folder, now clearly marked with a seal none of them recognized, until that moment. Back in the terminal, things moved fast. Emails fired from Easton Trust to Havenport's legal team. Compliance alerts pinged across departments. The phrase immediate stakeholder flag echoed into conference calls, message threads, risk assessment memos. And by the time Jade reached the baggage level, her tote had been moved. Unzipped, tampered with. Her papers were intact but creased. Not missing, just handled, with the entitled carelessness of someone who never thought it would matter. You opened my bag, she said to the next man who greeted her. He stammered. We thought it might be a safety risk. A sealed envelope with a legal insignia was your safety concern? He blinked. Would you mind stepping into a private room so we can clarify? You mean control the conversation in private? He cleared his throat. We had a report about your behavior. What behavior? Refusal to comply, verbal challenge, unusual movement during flight. You mean I used the bathroom? He looked away. She stepped forward, her voice sharper now, slicing through the bureaucratic fog. You tried to rewrite the narrative, not because I was disruptive, but because I didn't yield. Inside the next room, she laid it all out. The audit trail, the identity clearance, the internal review logs quietly initiated during the flight. A man named Nathan Grant from Guest Operations tried to salvage the moment. We'd like to file an incident summary or let this pass. No, she interrupted. You don't get to erase what happened. You don't get to let this pass. She opened her app. A silent confirmation from the Genesis Compliance Hub blinked green on the screen. Authorization verified. And the system unraveled in real time. One floor above, the CEO of Havenport was handed a memo. One line. Stakeholder Whitmore has activated override privileges. Suspend all operations related to merger compliance until further notice. In the employee lounge near Terminal E, Heather Cole read her name on a schedule update. Temporary reassignment, domestic short haul only. No premium clients, no first-class rosters, not a termination, just a fall. The kind you can feel, the kind that follows you home. Back in the main terminal, Jade walked past a digital kiosk. Her boarding profile reloaded, priority restored, lounge access reinstated. Every gate scanner now recognized her before she arrived. And still, she didn't smile. She didn't need to. As she passed the private concierge desk, a voice behind her stopped, a whisper, ragged, small. Miss Whitmore. It was Heather, uniform pressed, face pale. They made eye contact for only a moment. You said I didn't fit, Jade said, not bitter, not loud. Heather opened her mouth, but Jade finished it for her. You were right. Then she leaned in slightly. I didn't come here to fit into first class. She paused. I came here to buy it. And with that, she walked on. No raised voice, no threat, just the calm presence of someone who had always been underestimated, until now. If this story moved you, tell us in the comments. Which moment hit you the hardest? What emotions did you feel? Comment 100 if you believe stories like this need to be told louder. And let us know, where in the world are you watching from? Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded. Silence doesn't mean surrender. Follow us for part 2 of Jade's journey, because this isn't where the story ends. It's where her legacy begins.